From Coin 6, your local election headquarters, this is the debate for Portland City Commissioner.
Welcome back to our debate for Portland City Council position number 3 with incumbent Joanne Hardesty and challenger Rene Gonzalez. This round of questions will feature one specific question for each candidate. So let's go back to our panel. This question from Portland Tribune reporter Jim Redden, and Mr. Gonzalez will answer it first.
For viewers that weren't aware of what happened today in the ruling on your lease, the administrative law judge ruled in your favor and did completely dismiss the $77,000 fine that had been imposed on you by the city elections officials. So what you were doing was declared legal, but it couldn't be argued that you violated the spirit of the small donor law by accepting such a large discount on such a prime piece of real estate?
Let's look at the assumption in terms of prime real estate. My campaign office has been vandalized twice in the 5 months we've been there. It's been broken into once. It is overwhelmed with homeless and unsheltered camps in front of it at times. Nearly every single day I'm downtown, you see someone in some state of psychosis within walking distance of our office. So we felt it. I'm an East Sider. I've lived on the East Side for 20 years. When it looked like we had a chance to emerge from the primary, I was hearing from folks downtown on the west side that they wanted to see more of me. That was the neighborhoods, that was the small business owners. And so we felt it was important to be downtown. Secondly, I am a father of 3 raising children in this city, and became increasingly concerned about the security around my home being identified as the campaign office for our campaign. So it became very, very important that we find a place, that we find it downtown. And again, we've been fully vindicated on this matter. I believe that we were consistent with the spirit and the law of the small donor program. Thank you.
Mr. Hardesty, do you have a comment on that?
Well, I do remember my opponent losing his mind in the primary when Vadim was getting special deals as well from the same donors that are supporting my opponent now. So I will just say that ultimately the voters will decide whether that was a sleight of hand or whether it was an appropriate deal that was struck with Mr. Jordan Schnitzer. I can say other people would love to get $250 per month rent for such a huge downtown space.
Lisa Balick, your next question to Commissioner Hardesty.
You support the city setting aside property for affordable housing. And my understanding is that you'd like to use some of the state money, particularly the kicker, to help pay for some of that. Can you explain why?
Yes, because as you may know, the state is about to send $4 billion out the door when the state has not fully funded mental health treatment for folks who need it in our state, and we're at the bottom in the nation for providing mental health and behavioral health services. So it would be insane for our legislators to send $4 billion back out the door when they have not invested in mental health treatment and housing all over the state. Housing that people can afford to live in is not just a Portland problem, it's a national problem. And we could actually get a good investment of those dollars if, in fact, we redirected some of those kicker dollars back to solving some of these big issues. And let me say, Eastmoreland is not East Portland. It's not living on the east side when you live in East. I live on the east side. It's in the numbers. It is not in Eastmoreland.
Do you have a comment, Mr. Gonzalez, on that?
Well, sure. We've spoken to this. I outdrew Joanne east of 60th, east of 82nd, east of 205. I don't preach, I don't pander. I'm here to protect the city, including East Portland. So I've looked to unify us, not divide us between East and West, not between the wealthy and the working class, and Portlanders are responding to it. So, again, it's not where you live, it's who you're listening to, it's looking our problems straight in the eye and working on solutions. Thank you.
Jim Redden,
if I may?
I'll give you just a few seconds on this.
Okay, I just want to say that there is a difference between being a millionaire and being a working person in the city of Portland. My opponent's a millionaire. I've worked my whole life, right? My rent goes up. I am the only renter on the city council. So we are not having the same lived experience, and pointing out the differences is not divisive. We're never going to fix the problem if people don't know what the problem is.
Okay. We have to go to Jim Redden now. You have a question for Commissioner Hardesty.
I do. Today I got a campaign mailing from you that appears to try and change this race from a nonpartisan race to a partisan race, where you're portraying yourself as a loyal Democrat and suggesting your opponent is a Republican, which he is not. Only 51% of the voters in Portland are registered Democrats. 49% are either other party members or unaffiliated. Don't you believe they have a right to be represented on the city council when it's addressing issues that affect them directly?
I think that everybody should run and serve in public office at one time or another, if they're qualified for the position. The reason you have that flyer, and I got it today as well, is because my opponent has only worked with Republican media folks. All his staff are Republican folks. They've only worked for other Republican people who've been elected. So if you walk like a duck, you talk like a duck, chances are it's a duck. This is a nonpartisan race, but when I continue to hear rhetoric that is true Republican rhetoric, like we're going to lock people up if people don't get treatment, we're gonna hire 400 officers when Chief Lavelle can't hire 100. That's been funded for well over a year. It is the talking points that have been used by Republicans forever, and it's just bringing it to light. ED 300 actually elected. This gentleman actually endorsed candidates who are anti-black, anti-gay, anti-teaching real history. These are the people that he supported. So again, as Maya Angelou says, when people tell you who they are, believe them.
All right, I have to give you a chance to respond to that, Mr. Gonzalez.
So a number of categorically false statements by Commissioner Hardesty. My consultants are Democrats, CN4 Partners. My pollster is Lake Research Group, who's done work for Biden and a number of Democrats in our region. So her statement is absolutely false with respect to who our primary consultants are, our primary advisors are. With respect to what I did on schools, we had to address our problem of closed schools in a bipartisan way. That meant working with folks across the state, regardless of political affiliation, and that sometimes means focusing on what we agree on and not on what we disagree on.
The damage to kids in the schools because of those people now on school boards, those kids are living with the damage you created, Mr. Gonzalez.
May I respond to that?
You have to, yes.
So the extended closures of public schools in the city of Portland has been described as the greatest public health failure of our lifetime. While rich could go to private school, public schools were locked out. While wealthy kids could get swim lessons at the MAC Club, they could not go to Portland parks to learn how to swim. That had the most devastating effect on our black and brown students, our most devastating effect on our poorest among us, our most marginalized children, including those that are homeless, that are without social capital. So the fight for schools was the most important fight for many parents of their lifetime. It was essential that we worked with others that shared that same view.
We have to end this discussion on this topic right now. We'll move on to the next question, and that comes from Lisa Bailey.
Well, I do want to just follow up on this group, ED 300. On that, clearly it was a controversial group that was put together based on what we just heard just a few minutes ago here. Question to follow up on this is that, were you aware this could be a political liability, and where would you draw the line of who you would align with in the future?
With respect to your first question, it wasn't even on my mind whether it was a political liability. I wasn't running for office at the time. I was working to reopen schools so that working families could get some relief, so that children could reestablish their access to schools, to sports, and to the arts. So there was no political calculus at the time. It was working with others that have shared views with respect to open schools, and that's who we worked with. And inside of Portland, those folks were pro-choice and very supportive of gay marriage and gay rights. We didn't ask the question, though, and so when you go into conservative areas, they may have different views on those issues than I did. So in terms of long-term damage, we are going to be paying for the rest of these children's lives with the damage we did by extended school closures, particularly for our most marginalized communities. Third grade Black and brown students in the state of Oregon are materially behind their peers in other states. It is a direct result of extended school closure.
But just to follow up on the question, is there a line you won't cross in terms of who you would align yourself with?
Certainly, and when we're talking about city issues, right, core Portland issues, I'm pro-choice. I support gay marriage. I believe you should be able to marry whoever you love. And those are fundamental values of Portlanders. So I will protect those with everything I can as a city commissioner. And so, yes, that excludes working in some respects on those issues with folks who disagree with those core values of Portland.
Commissioner Hardesty, do you have a response? No. Okay, let's go to our next viewer question right now. This question comes from Gil. He's in the Laurelhurst neighborhood. What are 3 things you would do to unite our community and restore our economy and livability? Commissioner Hardesty.
Well, I'm glad to answer that question. Let me tell you what I've done. I had a very successful project because I listened to community. You may remember Mount Scott, our leader neighborhood, was suffering like most neighborhoods with high rates of gun violence. My office was the only elected office that actually listened to them. I sent a staff person to work with them. And right now, we've now created this beautiful community meeting space where the community owns the space. It is beautiful, it's colorful, and we reduced gun violence by over 60%. When I started that pilot project, I was the laughingstock of social media. Haha, Commissioner Hardesty thinks orange barrels are gonna stop guns. Guess what? Not only did it stop gun violence, but it's actually retained that reduction ever since we initially did the pilot project. I'll be doing 3 more of those around the city because what I know is the community has the answer to the violence that's taking place in our community.
Mr. Gonzalez.
You know, we're looking to triple the number of shootings in 2022 versus the first year Joanne entered City Council. We're looking to set another record in homicides in Portland after setting a record last year. But we're looking at record car thefts in the city of Portland. Crime is out of control. You know, pitting traffic barrels up, it makes someone feel good, but it's not addressing the underlying causes of serious crime in the city of Portland. Now, with respect to how we unify and restore our economy and livability, it's multifaceted there. We do have to stabilize the sense of public safety in the city. We do have to make our city more inviting to those that are creators, that those who are leading great nonprofits and business organizations. We need to embrace them with more open arms. And we have to do everything we can to get our common areas going again. That's our parks and that's our downtown. That's us holding hands together, committing to fully reopening as a city of Portland, to re-engaging in the public sphere and reestablishing the social fabric. Thank you.
Jim Redden, your next question.
Joanne, you've been accused of changing your positions because the election is getting close and crime has become such a big issue. In July of 2021, you said you could not in good conscience add to a dysfunctional police force. Now you say you believe that 100 more officers should be hired. How do you reconcile the 2 statements?
I didn't change my perspective at all. What I said is we should hire the positions we've already funded, and then we should assess whether we need more. So I don't see that as a difference in positions. I am concerned, as per the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, that we've not made the progress and transformation that the community had hoped we would have made by this time, which is why the DOJ is really putting their thumb down on the neck of the city of Portland to make sure that we're going to have an accountable police force. And so I don't see that as a contradiction. The reality is that gun violence is up. Violence is up across the board. Domestic violence is way up. We have no plan to address domestic violence. We have no plan to address stranger-to-stranger violence. But we appear to want to shape violence as a one-size-fits-all. And what I'd love to see is a comprehensive plan on how we're going to get those guns out of our community. What I know is we don't manufacture guns in Oregon, and we should be able to stop them at the border.
Mr. Gonzalez, do you have a comment?
Sure. You know, for better or worse, Joanne Hardesty, Commissioner Hardesty, was the face of the defund movement in the city of Portland when it was popular, when it was what the pitchforks were calling for in the city. And we're recognizing now the catastrophic damage that did, both in the short term in our ability to address crime, and in the medium term in our ability to recruit and retain not just police officers, but professionals in our fire bureau, our EMSs, even some of our social workers who are very much dependent on a fully functioning police department to stay safe, to do their job. So yes, you know, Commissioner Hardesty is seeing the same polling data the rest of us are. Portlanders are scared. They don't feel their city is safe enough. And suddenly she's gotten religion on the need for police. I wish it had occurred many, many years ago. Thank you.
I'd love to respond if I may.
You may.
Let me just say that the reality is that the crime, we have police officers. Their job is to solve crime. I expect police to go out and actually arrest people who are involved in open-air drug dealing. We did not actually make that legal. And especially if it's only a few blocks from the police, one of the police offices, there's no reason why police are not out addressing those issues. And I hope that we get some accountability for how the 700+ officers are currently spending their days. When I hear constantly from the public, the police say they're understaffed. The sheriff is understaffed. The fire is understaffed. 911 operators are understaffed, but they're not whining to the public that they're understaffed. They're still doing their job every single day, and I expect the police to do their job every single day.
I have to cut you off right there. Lisa Balick, your next question.
For Rene first.
Yes.
You have strong support from some of the heavy hitters in real estate development in Portland. How would you make more affordable housing available for low and moderate income people, especially those people who want to live close to where they work instead of have to take long bus rides into town, and they can't afford the rents right now, and you say that you're not in favor of rent control?
Yeah, so over the medium term, it's essential that we add stock. We have not been adding sufficient units in our marketplace for many, many years, particularly over the last 5 to 6, with the adoption of inclusionary zoning. Again, a venerable goal. We mandated a certain amount of affordable housing for projects from 20 units and above. But what the unintended consequence has been is that many are only applying for 19-unit developments or are foregoing investing in the city of Portland entirely. So for better or worse, we have to address the affordability crisis in part with market solutions. It's never going to be sufficient. We have other artificial limitations on supply in the city of Portland. We adopted the urban growth boundary 2 generations ago that limit supply in the metro area for good reasons, but has had an unintended consequence on supply. So we have to look at the whole thing, the right combination of carrots and sticks for investors to invest in the city of Portland. We've got to make it more hospitable in the permitting and the development process. I think these are all crucial pieces to it, and we've got to address it from a supply perspective. Thank you.
Next, we'll start a lightning round. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to respond. The first question for each candidate comes from Lisa Balick.
For Commissioner Hardesty, you're the commissioner in charge of the Fire Bureau, yet the union has endorsed your opponent. That union is asking for approval for double time to handle a shortage of firefighters to encourage those off shift to come in when they're shorthanded. Now, 911 operators were given this pay temporarily due to staffing shortages as well. So why do you oppose firefighters who are first responders getting this extra pay when their jobs are to save lives and property, and we need them there quickly?
It is a fiscally irresponsible move for any government to pay double overtime. Firefighters traditionally work overtime as part of their regular shift. I'll be the first to say that firefighters have been on the front line of every disaster we've had for the last few years. They are solid workers for the city of Portland, but my job is not just to look out for the bureaus in my portfolio and give them what they need. My job is to look for the entire city's budget and to determine whether or not the city's budget could actually fully support that. 911 is paying for it because they get money from other governments, and they're paying for it within the budget they already have.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Yeah, so, we have a number of fire professionals that are being required to do mandatory overtime. And it was one thing when it was going on for a few months. It's now going on multiple years of this reality. This means folks that can't see their families, they are compelled to work overtime, and they are sanctioned if they refuse. And so it is a crisis in staffing. It's driving our folks out of the city. And so as a short term, I'm supportive of it. I do think over the long term, we've got to address our staffing issues more holistically. Thank you.
Jim Redden, your lightning round question.
Well, actually, I have the same question for both candidates, and that is, what is your position on the charter reform measure that's on the November 8th ballot? And if it passes, where your stand passes, how will that help solve the problems that are facing Portland today?
Mr. Gonzalez, you can answer that first.
Well, I'll start with the second part. I think it has some good pieces. It calls for the professional management of bureaus. I think that's a positive step. It has geographical representation, which I think is also positive. However, I think it's too complicated. I think it's too experimental. I think multi-use or multi-member districts undermines the accountability we're seeking. I think the combination with ranked choice voting is simply too experimental, at least in the United States. It has been done a little bit overseas. And I think it's too complicated to implement. I prefer MAPS's plan that we're hoping to see in May. Thank you.
Commissioner Hardesty.
I'm really excited about the opportunity for the Charter Commission's proposal to pass. And when it passes, you will need an experienced leader to help with the implementation. How will it help with the problems that we face today? It will help because a professional city manager will be managing the day-to-day operations, and that will free up elected leaders to spend more time engaging with their constituents. When I came into City Hall, my time is up.
You can finish the sentence, though.
When I came into City Hall, I promised that I would do quarterly meetings all over the city of Portland, and I kept that promise up until March 2020 when COVID hit.
Lisa Balick, your lightning round question.
If you don't win and the charter reform is approved, would you run for one of the newly created seats?
I have no intention of not winning.
Mr. Gonzalez.
I don't know. I'd have to get the wife's approval, and after 15 months of campaigning, that's a tall order. So that remains to be seen.
Understood. Jim Redden, your next lightning round question.
What is the most recent artistic or cultural or sporting event that you've been to not on your official time?
Is that me first?
Sure.
It was Canada's Gone Wild with Willamette Week.
Thorns game. Got to see Crystal Dunn bury a volley. It was gorgeous.
All right. Very good. And Lisa, your next lightning round question.
Yeah, I want to go back to the police and the shootings, with the hundreds and hundreds of shootings in Portland, more than 70 homicides. Police say they need more officers. Do you believe the Bureau has adequate staffing once they fill those 100 vacancies?
Mr. Gonzalez, answer that one first.
No, I mean, by any reasonable metric, whether you're looking historic staffing of police officers to population in terms of Portland historically, or you're looking at other cities our size, I think we're at least 300-400 police officers from optimal there. So we need to fill the positions we have, but we have to do some long-term investments in police over multiple years. Having said that, there are a number of weaknesses in our criminal justice system. Some are underinvestments in public defenders, prosecutors, and jail space, and some of them are ideological. Police alone will not solve all of our crime problems, but we need multiple years of investment there. Thank you.
Commissioner Hardesty.
I've been working with the mayor since I showed up in 2019 to build a community safety division. So within the community safety division is the Office of Violence Prevention, which actually funds community programs to reduce gun violence in communities. Also would be included Portland Street Response, which is a non-armed response to people suffering mental health issues on the street. So I believe I have effectively provided more opportunity for police to do the real job of solving crime. And I think as we continue to build that community safety system, we'll have to reassess whether or not we've got the right number of people in those various positions.
We are running out of time on tonight's debate, so let's move on to the closing statements now. Each candidate will have 60 seconds. We randomly selected the order for each candidate, so tonight we begin with Joanne Hardesty.
Yes. First, let me thank you all for the invitation to be here this evening. Voters, you know me, and you know that polite women do not make things happen. I am at City Council because you wanted a fighter that would fight for you. I have a long list of things that I've accomplished, but not because I did it by myself. I did it with you, community. And with you, we will make sure that all Portlanders, not just the rich, not just the ones that have resources, but all Portlanders will come back from this devastation. It will take all of us, not demonizing people because they're poor. It will take all of us to come back. And I am that fighter you sent to City Hall to make change. And guess what? I'm the only one that's made change, significant change, in my short time at City Hall. I would be honored to earn your vote once again so I can continue to roll Portland Street Response out and make sure this community is safe. Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez, closing statement.
I want to thank Ken and the host for today and Coyne for hosting this great event. High level, I'm a grandson of the city, a fifth generationer, in fact. Deeply tied to its history, very, very focused on restoring the beautiful aspects of it, protecting our inheritance as a city. That includes our beautiful parks, a once thriving downtown, a culture of civic engagement. These are all that's part of our legacy, and it's something we need to protect and restore. At the same time, I'm a father to 3 Portland-born children, and I will, if you select me, I will make every decision in light of what's going to attract and retain families to raise their children here, and hopefully for those children to want to come back to the city. Last but not least, before you today is a big question about what kind of leadership you want in the city of Portland as we emerge from this pandemic. It's not going to be easy, but I'll be data-driven, I'll listen, and I'll have backbone on the tough issues facing the city. Thanks so much for listening in today.
I'd like to thank both candidates for being here. That's it for our City Commissioner debate, position 3 here on Coin 6. A reminder, in Oregon, ballots are out and so are the voters' pamphlets. The Multnomah County Elections Office says all voters should have received their ballots in the mail by now. The office says if you need a replacement ballot, you can call 503-988-VOTE. That number is on your screen. The deadline to send it back is on Election Day, November 8th. It has to be postmarked by that day. And you can also drop your ballot at an official drop box by 8 p.m. on Election Day for it to be counted. A reminder for Washington State voters, the last day to register to vote by mail or online is Monday, October 31st. With the midterms less than 2 weeks away, Coin 6 and Eye on Northwest Politics are taking an in-depth look at the major issues. We hear from the candidates for governor, and I sit down with managing editor of Pamplin Media Group, Dana Haynes. We'll discuss the big races and issues on your November ballot. It's all ahead in an hour-long special, Eye on Northwest Politics, midterm election special. That's coming up Saturday at 9 p.m., Sunday afternoon at 3, and Monday night at 7 on Coin 6. Again, I'd like to thank all the candidates, I'd like to thank Lisa Balick and Jim Redden, and our viewers as well. We appreciate you inviting us into your homes and letting us debate the issues with these candidates. Have a good night.